Hello, everyone, and thank you for cutting your lunch short and showing up to the first session after lunch. So, as was introduced, Dore Copper, we're a private company right now as Amaku, and as we go public, our name change will be to Dore Copper, which will hopefully happen in the very, very near future. We're in the process right now. So, from here on in, when I refer to us or the company, it's Dore Copper, which will be official within a few weeks, hopefully. So, where is Dore Copper operating? We're in Chibougamau, which is northern Quebec, not too far north, but it's up there. So there's good access to it all year round. It's only about 500 kilometers away from here if you go straight north. So we've put together a 43-101 as well on the properties that we have in the last year. So we've been drilling and exploring, restarting the work there up in the camp since 2017. So just a little bit about the company and where we fit in. So regarding gold grade, copper grade. So we're focusing on gold and copper, and most of our assets are copper rich, and one or two have a reasonable amount of gold. A little bit of history about the area. So the mining here goes back for about 70 years. So starting back in the 50s, the Lac Dore complex was discovered, and Copper Rand was one of the largest mines in the area. And we now own the evolution of what Copper Rand was. So there's been several additions to the plant, to the mill, and it's been closed down since 2008, right here. And then we've started work on it in 2017. So we did some drilling in the area, and over the year we put together a new 43-101, which included an update on the resources at the Corner Bay site and a maiden resource at Cedar Bay. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about that. So there's a little bit about infrastructure in the area. So as you can see, there's the town of Chibougamau right here, and the mill is just right there. So it's very, very close, highway access right to it. This lake right here is the Lac Dore, so Dore Lake. The town has 7,500 people. There's lots of amenities. There's truck shops, there's heavy equipment places. So it was a mining town its entire life, and it still is, even though mining's kind of taken a pause. So there's power lines right to the site. We have, the mill can process up to 2,700 tons a day if need be, and there's physical room for more also if need be. The tailings facility has another 9 million tons capacity, and they're right here. We can also raise the berm for more capacity, also if needed, if production goes into overdrive. So there's lots of potential, lots that can be done with this. Just a general geological overview. So it's in the very eastern part of the Abitibi Belt. The Chibougamau area itself, there's a large pluton under the lake, and then you have volcanic and sedimentary sequences pressed up around the upper side and the southern side here. And most of the deposits in the area are right here along Lac Dore on the western edge of the lake. And then there's a couple kind of, there's one to the south and then one on the east side. And if any of you know the Black Rock project, the large titanium vanadium, that's happening right here on the eastern side as well. So just a little bit about structural. We've come to have a better understanding since taking over and just going through the old geological data, looking at geophysics, just looking at all the available data suites, starting to put something together as to explain why things are the way they are in the area. Because historically, it wasn't really done. Historically, more just ore was chased. So where there was ore was found, ore was developed, ore was mined. They didn't really do too much to try and understand it and to predict where there could be more. So the entire kind of camp, the predominant structural strain would be north-south. So you have these north-northeast trending faults cutting all the way through the lake. And these will create perpendicular extensional faults, which correspond with So this deposit, Copper Rand, one of the main ones, but there's another dozen or so along the lake in the same orientation. So these extensional shears, down drop normal faults, and you have the mineralization within those shears. The one and only deposit that's on strike from these north-northeast faults in a little jog in the structure here is the Henderson and Portage Shear. So there was 3 mines there. It's just the one shear, but it was owned by 3 different companies at a time, so each were mining a separate piece of it. But that's one of the largest ones as well. So between Copper Rand and Henderson and Portage, over 30 million tons was mined in the area of the historic total of 55 million tons. So these two are the 2 dominant shears that hosted mineralization. Down here we have Corner Bay. It's also one of the few that's just a north-south oriented structure, not as well understood and does not occur as frequently as these southeast, northwest oriented extensional faults. But nonetheless, this is one of our star projects right here, and we'll get into him coming up. So Corner Bay Mine, that was the one that was just in the southeast corner of the lake. It was developed up until 2009 when the company went bankrupt, the previous owners. So they developed about 2 kilometers of underground development. So the ramp is there. They developed 3 levels to prep for stoping. They never got to stoping. They just took a bulk sample of 40,000 tons at the time. And the historic resource on it was 1.56 million tons. And we've doubled it with our drilling last year to 3 million tons. And the grades were averaging out to 3.47% copper. And here's an example of some of the ore we're getting. And here's a long section view of Corner Bay. So the yellow is a diabase dike, north-south striking, and the vein is more or less north-south, and it's dipping towards the west. So this is the upper portion that comes out at surface, and then the dike kind of cuts it in half, and this is the lower portion. So the historic resource was on the upper portion behind the dike there, and we focused on drilling off these areas here to continue the ore. And as you can see, the last intercepts we have 5 meters at 5%, 5 meters at almost 4%, 6 meters at 4. And this is the last fence drilled. So it's completely open along strike to the south. We're going to infill the area in between these two. It's the same vein. There's just a gap of drilling. So right here, you can see one of the best intercepts historical was 6.7 meters true width at 9% copper. So we followed that up. We couldn't replicate the result, but nonetheless, it's still good grades. We have some ideas as to why that might be, and we will infill this in between to join the two. That's an easy way to get more tons, and then just continue this out along strike. There's also very good potential for parallel veins. So in review of old data and with our newer drilling, we realized that there's not just one main vein, there's several stacked veins. And what our focus will be in the next drilling campaign will be to further identify and confirm the economic viability of these parallel zones to multiply the tonnage without having to go deeper or step out along strike. So here's just a little video of the actual deposit, so you can kind of get a glimpse of it in 3D. And there on the left, you can see the current resource as of the latest drilling. So 3.01 million tons at 3.47% copper. There's a little bit of gold. It's about 1/4 gram per ton, but so here you can see the historic resources in the red vein up top. You can see some of the development there in black, the historic, and the newly defined resources here down below. So up top, it's one large vein, and then we have secondary veins just a little bit offset, little pods of ore. And here as well, you can see these two join up. There's just a lack of drilling in between them because we focus on continuing this right underneath the dike and trying to follow up the very high grades historically found here. So in the next campaign, we will be infilling this and continuing this out to the south along strike. Cedar Bay is the other project we have. It's just across the lake from Copper Rand, so the historic mine site. This was an operation from the 50s, I believe, and it closed down 1990. Historically mined 3.8 million tons at 1.5% copper and 3 grams gold. Here's a cross section You can see, so we got the head frame right on the edge of the lake. This is the old, these are the old mined out stopes in blue. They're not all digitized in there. They mined another area here, a parallel zone. And then over here in this area was a dead zone. So when they got down to it, the ore started to pinch out. The grades weren't as good. So they closed down the mine. And then through developments on the other side of the lake at Copper Rand, they came back 2 years later to test their theory of that maybe there's ore down below. So they drilled from underground in 94, 95. They identified many good intercepts. They didn't put a resource together, but in their plan, they were going to come back to it in a few years to join Copper Rand and Cedar Bay from underneath, so they can have two accesses to the ore. And they never made it to that. The deep Copper Rand project, the CRAN 5000, was underway when the company went bust. So this was never re-drilled. So we came back, we did a little bit of drilling from surface, firmed up the grades, the intercepts, and put together a maiden resource on this deeper area. So it's 300,000 tons. No, we'll go for the next one. So again, here's another video. This is plan view of head frame. These are the old workings. Sorry about the font. I don't know what happened there. But so with the new 43-101, we've added a maiden resource of 366,000 tons at 8.6 grams gold and almost 2% copper. And the shaft, even though they stopped mining at the 2,400 level, the shaft goes down to 3,400 feet because they did that in anticipation that there would be more going on later, but they never managed to capitalize on that. So the shaft is done, and the new ore that's defined is defined down right here. It'll come into view in a second. And then also historically, at the time of the closure of the mine, there was about 250,000 tons left at the last two levels that they never got around to actually mining. So that's also there for the taking. So there's 3 new vein zones defined. And with more drilling, we assume that the main zone will continue at depth because the two deepest holes, these two guys right here, they intercepted the main structure where it started to open up again. So we were getting some decent gold grades, decent copper grades. So the plan for next year is to drill from surface and to go in from the other side, not from the south, but from the north, and to employ directional drilling. So we have a lot more information per meter, and we'll get lots of good intercepts through here going down dip, because we have 3 parallel zones and there's potential to have 2 more. So we can have 6 parallel veins right at the base of the shaft, ready to go. The Copper Rand mine, so this is the deep project I was telling you about earlier, where they, when they stopped mining, they were working on this, and the CRAN 5000 project is the 5,000 feet below surface. So it's quite deep, 1.5 kilometers. Some exceptional grades and stopes were taken out of this area. And then below what was unmined, we still have some very, very good intercepts. So 2.5 meters at 4% copper and 4.7 grams gold, 4.9 meters at 1.6 copper and 4 gold, 5 meters at 3% copper and 1.5 gold, or 10 meters at 1.7% copper and 1 gram gold. And this is open in all directions. And within the 10 meter interval, there's also much higher grades over 1.5 to 3 meters. And the historic resource left behind in this area, the stopes that they didn't touch, is almost 2 million tons at, do we have it? We don't have it. No, but it's about 3 grams gold and about 2% copper of the remaining historic resources. So the idea here is that with Cedar Bay just being across the lake, once we get down to depth, we can come over and we can do more drilling here, put something together, and we can access it via Cedar Bay or go back in through the top of Copper Rand, dewater, go back in and continue mining this. We also have another deposit, Devlin. This one's the only deposit in the camp that's hosted within the Pluton. So again, historically, it was assumed that there is no mineralization in the Pluton itself. It's only in the anorthosite around the edges. This deposit proves that concept wrong. So it's a flat-lying deposit as well. Different, weird. It's not in a shear zone. It seems to be exploiting a plane of weakness between 2 different phases of the tonalitic intrusion. So this was defined, drilled off. There's a resource on it. It totals about 700,000 tons at about 2%, 2.5% copper. And has been developed into, so the ramp is there, but none of it was mined yet. So we have some ideas for this guy as well. Possible offset continuations that we will be targeting with our the next time we get around to drilling this. And it's teed up, it's ready to go as mill feed. Also in the last year, what we've done, we've taken a 2002 megatemp survey that was done by Fugro, and we've had it reinterpreted. We have depth slices, so we have a little bit of a better understanding in terms of the large scale structures that are going on around the lake. So again, here you can see there's the Copper Rand mine is here, Cedar Bay is right there, some of the old mines, Jacques, there's the Lac Dore ramps, the Portage and Henderson Shear is right there. And the main Lac Dore fault is coming right through here. So there was I don't know what happened here. There's some of the lines are missing, but for those of you who've done any geophysical work, we have, with this, it's very apparent on the map. You can see the old structures popping up, the very known deposits, the east-west oriented ones here, southeast, northwest, the large northeast oriented one at Portage Henderson, there's Jacques. But you can also find some of the smaller stuff that's never really been explored for or touched or drilled. You have some lineaments, mag breaks here, going down south here, just north of Lac Dore. You have another one just north of Copper Rand. There's another one. So these are other possible future targets that we've come up with that we will be testing end of this year and all through the next year to hopefully bring online more deposits, because the camp has a lot more to offer than what's been mined. Even though it's historic, it's been mined for 70 years, it's not done at all. There's a lot more to happen here. Also, we've been scraping together any data from around the camp, from around the Lac Dore area, the old mine sites, drill holes, surface samples, any kind of documented faults, everything. We've been putting it all together into this regional compilation. So we have everything in one workspace. So we can work out any kind of relationships that we see, any patterns we recognize. So this is kind of a replay of where the Corner Bay mine is. So it's kind of isolated, but just further northwest away from it, with the main Lac Dore complex, we'll zoom in on that in 1 second, you can see there's several thousand drill holes, there's tons of assays, and lots of stuff that has never been followed up on. So this is the entire camp. The old Principal mine used to be here. That one's kind of a no-go, but here you can see Copper Rand, there's Cedar Bay, there's Jacques, there's other deposits in this area that that show promise. So there's lots of stuff going on, lots of targets, lots of opportunity, and that's something we will be focusing on over the next coming few years. So in summary, it's one of Canada's premier near-term development opportunities in Quebec. So we're one of the few copper stories out there, and everything is going quite well. Lots of opportunity. 3 deposits with current 43-101 resources. There's substantial exploration upside in the entire camp. Lots to do, lots of opportunity. High-grade copper. Again, we're averaging over 3% copper. In Cedar Bay, we have 8.5 grams gold. It's very, very good. And if you guys have any questions, if we have time, you can ask them now. If not, there's contacts for Ernest Master, President, and me, the Exploration Manager, and we'll be happy to get back to you guys.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Ernie, maybe you can put your hand up there just so that everybody knows who you are, and therefore you've got 2 individuals that you can try to corner and ask questions to prior to this go public. So thanks for, there's one question.
Curious to know what's the spend plan for the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, we're currently in the process of going public right now. And as soon as that happens, hopefully in the near future, in the next month or 2, We've raised $5 million, and we'll be spending most of that on drilling the camp. So about 80% will be drilling Cedar Bay, Corner Bay, and we'll spend about 20% of that drilling the regional targets. And then as we go along, more investment will be more drilling and more results.